This big report now out is their version of an indictment. They don't technically have that power, but it is very clearly, given the unprecedented times we're living in and what Congress went through that was so unprecedented in that insurrection, it is their somewhat unprecedented attempt to show what an indictment could look like. And if you watch the news, and here you are, so I think you do, you've probably heard of this term, speaking indictment. There are times when an indictment is very sparse. It doesn't tell the whole story, and you do that later at trial. A speaking indictment tries to tell the whole story for strategic and legal reasons, and sometimes prosecutors do that. They lay it out up front. Well, this speaking indictment is saying a lot. And I mention that because, again, I told you, me and my team, we've been reading through this, starting last night and into today, and other parts of it are quite readable. And they paint the picture of that speaking indictment, which is different from, say, the technical details that make a checklist of the elements of a crime. So they got stuff in here that wouldn't alone win a court case, but that they've included to tell the story, like how Trump had this impromptu gathering, ordering his staff to keep the door to the Rose Garden open because he was hearing this loud music, cheering, hooting, hollering from the supporters at Freedom Plaza, showing that his calls had worked, that people had already, at their own expense, made this trip. The noise and music, the report says, so loud, his aide said you could feel it shaking in the Oval. That's a mood that speaks to Trump's belief that he could take that energy, that muscle, and in a kind of evil, anti-American alchemy, he could take those people that he summoned and take them down to the Capitol and then, quote, intimidate officials and obstruct the joint session of Congress. Remember what I said about speaking indictment? That word obstruct is then back to the legal word. So they paint the picture of how do you really think he could do this? Well, days out, he could see the people. He's the President of the United States. He has access to information, intelligence, plus all the rumors and talk, and then he can hear them, and he thinks, I can get them down there. And then I can use them as muscle to threaten, intimidate, or to hurt, maim, injure, and kill. That wasn't off the table for him. These are special people, quote unquote, that he vows to pardon. He is absolutely publicly affirming the violent overthrow of the government. That's why at times you say, how many pages do you need? So then you look at the Republican Party and you say, why would he think that? I'm going to repeat what I said. Why would he think that he could take this muscle and change what otherwise was on the way to be a certification of an election he lost? Well, as I finish our highlights here in this report, and then I've got some great experts lined up, today's the day, I think, today's the day to do it. I'm going to tell you, looping it all together, why I think he thought that, which I think goes to his criminal intent. Donald Trump had pushed Republican leaders into breaking many other vows and ethical lines. So even though many had publicly said this one was too far and wouldn't work, to him, he had stared that down before and moved them. He'd been counted out before. Obviously in some matters that are of a different nature, but counted out in the campaign, counted out over the Access Hollywood tape, Charlottesville, never again. And then he had found how to move not everyone in our system. The last era, these 5+ years, have shown many different ways that he's lost. Many people who at great risk have stood up to this. But you know what he found that he could move? Not judges. Not FBI directors, not most of the Democrats who fought him and who won more votes than him 2 elections in a row, so but for the Electoral College, who've always had the mandate. No. The people Donald Trump learned he could move with these amoral tactics were, not all, but many elected Republican politicians. And that's the raw recent history that is vital to understand this report and that the DOJ would have to use if they tell this story in any legal setting. Because that is why the otherwise seemingly implausible coup plan becomes more explainable as plausible to Trump. And remember, why do we talk so much about his mindset? Well, do you like it or not? That's how the criminal law works. If somebody gets in a car accident, and God forbid they hit someone and kill them, you spend a lot of time talking about whether it was an accident or not. You say, why are we focused so much on their mentality, whether you think they're a murderer or not? Well, it's because there's a big difference between a car accident and murdering someone with the deadly weapon of a car. And I can tell you the court makes a big difference. So, what was plausible in his mind, this is what's bad for him. is the evidence suggests that to the very end, he did literally thought if he physically got to the Capitol with a show of force backed by violence, he would move Republicans in Congress and or Pence, and he could throw things into a chaos that could keep him actually in office through a gambit that we will explain in more detail next hour. And you could understand why he thought that. No matter how amoral, the same way you could understand why a mobster thinks witness intimidation can work. Because sometimes it does. And that's the context for the dramatic finish of this new report, showing Trump sharing his plan to march to the Capitol with the armed supporters after he finished his remarks, and a Secret Service agent and Trump's driver testifying that within 30 seconds of getting into the vehicle, the president asked if he could go to the Capitol. Now, that is the careful language of testimony, and they should be careful, but I would remind you, when the President of the United States is speaking to his direct subordinate employees, when he asks for something, it is usually an order. The report notes the motorcade did not even disband after they got to the White House, as they usually do. Instead, from the new report, quote, they were instructed to stand by in case the president's move to the Capitol did indeed happen. If that's not guilty sounding, I don't know what is. And then as Donald Trump watched the carnage on TV at the White House, even after he was pushed to tell the rioters tardily to go home, his lead attorney, Giuliani, continued, and this is proven, continued to seek to delay, aka illegally obstruct, the joint session of Congress. Think about that. Trump and his authorized attorney were still taking action to try to enact the coup plot and sabotage or delay or obstruct the certification after Trump had been dragged by his own most loyal remaining aides to say something about going home in a bid to limit his own criminal exposure that night. All of that is what leads the committee to conclude the central cause of January 6th was one man, Donald Trump, who caused and acted and led a team that took over 200 measures to overturn state election results. And the report then boils that down to where we started the week on Monday, the 4 different grounds to indict Donald Trump, from obstructing that proceeding, which, as you can hear, looks like a no-brainer at this point, to what are, I believe, more difficult legal charges like assisting an insurrection. That's the roadmap. Runs across 845 pages. It is a road paved with facts, receipts, evidence, and testimony. And remember, it's not from critics or outside observers or just those videos that we saw so shockingly on that fateful day. Some of the strongest, most damning evidence is from Donald Trump's aides in the room at a time when the room only had the people, sometimes in Washington they call them the lame duck or the dead enders, who were still by his side, still loyal to him in so many ways after he had lost the election. This is what those people say. We sometimes lose the capacity to process this stuff for the terrible, shocking reality of it. And there are many reasons for that. Some of them are above my pay grade. Some of them probably relate to psychology and coping mechanisms. But if this voluminous report does not spur the DOJ to action, then I don't know what will. And I say that with all due caveats that everyone is legally presumed innocent and the DOJ should only act in a nonpartisan, independent manner. But again, I don't know what's more independent than all this corroborated testimony from all these Trump aides saying, yep, he planned it, he wanted it, he thought it would work, he kept trying to do it. And after all that terrible horror you saw in real time on TV, he said, I still want the beast ready. I want to be able to hop in there and still go down there, and Rudy Giuliani is still obstructing the damn thing because they were really trying to enact a coup.